Welcome back to the Announcement Hockey Podcast. This episode, hopefully you're watching on YouTube, because I have a lot of props today. I'm at the age where whenever my mom visits, I get a new box of stuff from my attic.
Oh, here we go.
So this time I have a lot of extra Islanders memorabilia that I knew that I had, and there's more. But I wanted to, so I hope I'll do some descriptions. I guess before we get started, James, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Doing
We
well.
talk all the time. It's always hard to ask that question. It's like, yeah, I know how you're doing. We,
Nah, nothing in particularly different. Just waiting for my son to arrive. Just don't know when that's gonna be.
yeah, I wasn't sure if we had said that on the show, so I was avoiding bringing that up in
No,
particular. Although you've
it's
been
fine.
pretty public about your family, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, no big. Son's due by the 25th, but I don't know. My wife has this feeling he's coming earlier, so we go back and forth with yeah, he's coming, no, he's not. So but otherwise I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Did some yard work today. It was nice out, so I got the dad shoes on and went out and did some stuff. Nothing major, just kind of putzing around a little bit. Cut short by doing this, and I wanted to get some things ready for the show, and that's the segue. We do have a kind of a lot to get through. There were 4 games last week. There's a playoff race. They're playing the Rangers tomorrow, so I won't belabor this, but I did want to just bring some things up I thought were really cool. Um, if there are some things that I have that are just indicative of the period of when I was really, really a fan, I definitely have some stuff from the 90s, but this era. So what I'm holding is, and I believe when I was on Weird Islanders and we were talking about um Trevor Linden and things like that, I think we went a little off topic and we were talking about some of that stuff. So what I'm holding is a Chris Osgood um figurine. It used
Sure
to have a
are.
net. Yeah, it used to have a net with it. And I don't know if you can tell, the stick is very broken at the end. But somehow this has mostly survived. Again, the net is long gone, I'm sure. Um, I also have, and again, indicative of like the era that I was a fan, and I have bobbleheads, um,
Oh,
Alexei Yashin
incredible.
and Michael Pekka.
Incredible.
Yashin has seen better days. His head's almost fallen off, but he is signed, so
Oh.
that's something.
Is it,
Um,
it's on by Yashin, right?
no, I didn't. Yeah, it's signed by Alexei. Um, yeah, yeah, that was a great, and I've told this story on the show before when my mom worked for Computer Associates, and when Charles Wong owned them, each spring for a few years they would bring in some players, and she would get me the list beforehand, and I'd give her all the stuff that I had for each of them. So she'd be a like absolute psychopath. So that's why I have
Great.
I also have all of these cards signed by Claude Lapointe, and I would give them for any team that I had. So it's like
Oh,
Claude Lapointe, but he's in a Nordiques jersey. Then I have one of him in the because he was on the team for a long time.
yeah.
Mariusz Zukowski, but he was with Boston at the time. Roman Hamrlik. I do have Alexei Yashin, another Claude Lapointe. Apparently, I just had a million of those cards, and a Chris Osgood because why not?
Nice.
I have a. This is actually a really cool one, the Alexei Yashin, but from the World Championships or World Junior Championships, and
Ooh, that
so
one
yeah, I
is very cool.
held on to that one. I don't have these signed, but I thought you'd find it interesting. Ziggy Palffy
Very nice.
juniors and that, um, and not Islanders related, but I just pulled it out. Little Dominator rookie card,
Oh,
not a big
wow,
deal.
nice.
And then I have another like I
I
just
don't know how rare any of those cards are. I'm not, I have to look into it, but might be sitting on some money there, bud.
it's entirely possible. I have to go through. I have all my cards are from older sets.
Yeah.
And there's an entire box with a couple thousand cards that I have to go through. But I thought that'd be a funny way to start the
That
show,
was
just
an
because
excellent way to start the show because you just took me down a trip of memory lane, and I loved every second of it. So
Yeah,
good for
I'll
you for
have
having all
to.
that stuff. That Chris
Yeah,
Osgood statue feels like you're gonna have to scour eBay for a long time to find the little ice plate that he's on and the net.
and then you
One day.
stink. I have the other
Yeah,
half of it. I have the butt end in the box somehow. There's some things that survived. I don't know how they did. Other things
the
I
net's
can't
gone,
find.
but I have the broken end of the stick.
Yeah, right, like, the harder thing to lose, just didn't make it, and God, maybe it's up there. I have more somehow. I guess my room was, like, filled with stuff as a kid. I don't remember that, though.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty quick. You know, depending on how long you were collecting for, that stuff accumulates.
yeah, the cards all fit in the one box, but I have, like, 7 or 8 filled books, front and back of cards. So it's a lot. Yeah, I think my new winter project for next year is gonna be going through and figuring out what all the cards are
Yeah.
and enjoying that little trip. But, yeah, I thought that'd be an interesting way to start the show. Um, going to last week, a little recent history, Islanders have won 4 games in a row, and this could all be reversed
Dude.
by next week. All of
Okay.
all this
So,
excitement, all this positivity could be
no,
reversed.
don't say excitement. Don't, because again, this is 2 weeks ago. This is 2 weeks ago because last week we came on the show and we were like, "Good for us, not getting ahead of ourselves, getting excited for that 6-game win streak. Good for us," because look at what happened. They came back in the past week and they lost 4. At that point, was it 4 or 5 straight? And they just undid everything that they worked for in that win streak, propelling themselves in the standings, right? So now look, things are a little different at this point. I get it, right? The season's almost over. What do they have? 4 games left on the schedule. So
5.
okay, so 5. I understand being excited at this point. Great. Let's take a gander at the schedule, shall we? Who did they beat to get here? Yes, they beat I think after the last time we recorded,
We were
they
watching the Flyers game live
yes, okay,
on the
that's
show.
correct. So, they wound up winning that game in overtime. Probably shouldn't have had to have gotten there against that team, but they did. Got the 2 points. Fine. Tuesday, beat the Blackhawks 2-1. Probably closer than you want that game to be, but collect another 2 points. Thursday, who did they beat? The Blue Jackets. Okay, sick. Saturday, they beat the Predators. Now, they did it largely, and when I say largely, I mean like you need to bring Semyon Varlamov out for a large stake on the back of Varlamov. I mean, he made 41 saves. Granted, they're incredibly fortunate to have 2 goaltenders that can do this on any given night. Sorokin has not been doing that so much. He's been better since he's been having less of a workload, but they beat the Predators, who just went like what 16-0-2, something like that in like 18 games. They've slowed down a bit since, but like they're still a really good team. So yes, encouraging to see that. They didn't necessarily play their best hockey, but they also weren't terrible. I mean, giving up 41 shots isn't great. But when you look at that, and I haven't, but when you look at where those shots came from and how maybe they limited those to a lot of low, maybe it was a lot of quantity and not quality shots. I'll have to look. But I don't want to get ahead of myself because they play the Rangers twice, right? Before the end of the season. The Rangers twice. Look, whether you like it or not, the Rangers are a Stanley Cup favorite. And there's a reason for that. They've been pretty dominant all year. They have to play them twice. And again, you know, or granted, the Islanders typically do play well in this rivalry, but there's a lot riding on these 2 games at the end of the season for the Islanders that although, you know, the Islanders hopefully have that intensity like we need to play more desperate than we ever have. You bet your asses that the Rangers are going to match that intensity just for the pure fact that it's a rivalry game. So it's, maybe it's not going to get to the extent of what the Devils and the Rangers did last week, but it's still going to be a very, very difficult 2-game series at the end of the year. Then they play the Canadians. That should be 2 points. You hope it's 2 points. And if it's not 2 points, you really have some questions about this team and where they're at right now. The Devils,
They play the Rangers again in between, and then the Devils, and then the
yeah, I
Penguins.
said Rangers twice. So they play the Rangers twice. The Canadians, that should be 2 points. The Devils, I'm so like they're so inconsistent. They could be an incredible team one night and an awful team the next. That it's just like if the Devils play to their speed, they're going to outmatch the Islanders. It's just the way they are. But if they don't play to their speed, the Islanders can beat them no problem. And then the final game of the season, which could end up being like it could come down to it, is against the Penguins, who are surging. Sidney Crosby is playing, if you could believe it, like I think the best hockey he's ever played, despite probably not putting up as many points as he probably has in his career high. I don't know exactly what that is right
He's
now.
still he it's I don't know if he's still at a point per game, and I don't understand why
He
they
is.
did it with, like they did it though, like, 6 games ago where they said, "Oh, it's this many 16 straight." I said, he needs to finish the season that way, though.
No,
He
he
can't,
meant
like
he meant 82 points for the season. So he was a point per
oh,
game
he was a
player no
ver
matter
he's
what.
no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I was looking at that going like, I'm not maybe I'm not
Yes.
thinking about it correctly,
It
but that's a good
wasn't
call.
the it wasn't the best worded tweet. A lot of people did get confused thinking that, but it was just that he met 82 points, so he was going to be a point per game player no matter what,
Yeah, I didn't look
which
at
was
how many
which is
points he
cool.
had.
But he's willing that team to the playoffs and
Oh, yeah.
they're in now. The Flyers have fell out, which is just what a downward spiral that team has been on. All of that is a long-winded way of saying, yes, great that they've done what they did in the past week. Can we be confident they're going to do it this week? No.
Oh,
If they do,
I think you're absolutely right.
awesome. If they do, awesome. If they don't, yeah, sure. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. Um, a big difference is on Friday night, they got so much help scoreboard watching. So fans, Islander fans, I was watching I had some family in town, they're Ranger fans. We were watching that game, and I was a Ranger fan that night. I'll tell you that, beating the Red Wings, that was huge. Every single team that they needed to lose. The Red Wings, um, I think the Penguins, but the Red Wings, Washington, and Flyers all lost at the very least, if not also the Penguins. And it was a huge night. So then they go and beat the Predators. We're skipping ahead a little bit here. Then they beat the Predators, and now they're in a position where if they win 4-5, or at least go 3-1-1, I think that's enough. Especially if one of those games and the wins is against the Penguins. I th- I think they need 7 or 8 points on their own. Forget about what the rest of those teams are doing. I don't know this math for sure. So somebody, feel free to correct us. As I understand it, the magic number is 8, and that's any combination of the Islanders getting points and other teams losing them. So if the Islanders get 8 points on their own, there's nothing anybody else could do to get them out. Like if they just win 4 or 5 games or go, yeah, they just need 8 points in some fashion. And again, other teams are going to lose. You'd think not everybody can win out, right? So as long as the right teams are losing, they can do it on their own. I don't, the cliche that isn't really a thing because destiny is its own thing, but they control their own fate at the very least. So that's the difference now. Is we're at a time when they can just step up and make this situation their own. They don't have to depend now. They've scoreboard watched and did their thing, but now they don't have to depend on anybody. They can just go out and do their thing. They've been under pressure and they've performed well. I think we saw the full scope of what this team is over the last 4 games. Um, a bunch of nail biters, ones that should have, that they gave up a lead late in the third period, shutouts, good periods, bad periods, teams you should have just beaten outright, others that it took a little bit of time, and the deserved to win o meter was in your favor, but it just felt like they could have lost that game. It's different now. I think I'm excited because they can just do it on their own. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think you're bang on the money there. I think that would be tough. Um, it's really game by game and day by day because they can win and other teams can lose, and they're in good shape. So it's they'll likely need help, but they can get there on their own. And I think that's different now. To get into these games more specifically, I mean, the top players other than Nelson, who's been quiet but not bad, um, have been there. Palmieri's got a couple. Dobson's got back-to-back game-winning goals, if I'm not mistaken. Blue Jackets and the Predators, Barzell and Horvat, when they've been on the ice together, have been really good. Um, and we talked about the Flyers game on the show, didn't quite take care of things the way we needed them to, or the way they needed themselves to do. But it was good. They won at the end of the day. The Hawks game was, I don't know if you watched that. That was stressful. That felt like the entire season in one game. Um, they lost to them earlier in the season, so you're like, okay, you're kind of guaranteed. It's back to back. They're almost guaranteed to lose. I think we even said that on the show last week. Um, if you watched it, it felt like it wasn't a slam dunk the entire time. What was it like on your end? We strangely didn't text her in this game. What was it like on your end watching this game?
It boiled down to like speed. The Blackhawks are not, they're a younger team. They got players that could skate, and that was what the issue was with them against a lot of the younger teams in this league is that they just can't keep up. So for me, like great that they figured out a way to grind out a win. Um, they should have had those 2 points, but for me, it was just when Horvat and Barzell aren't on the ice, it's a slower team, and that's that's where they get bit a lot. They don't have that defensive structure they used to have where they can afford to play these slower games, and they're trying to match the speed of some of these teams that they just can't keep up with. So that's what it boiled down to for me.
Yeah, watching Bedard pretty early in the game go down that 2-on-1 and make just a great pass. You don't Cizikas was he made one of those, I'm in the area, I'm gonna make it look like I'm making a defensive play, but obviously wasn't in the right spot. Knee down, stick down situations. I maybe just didn't have enough juice to get himself back into the position. Um, but just a good player making a good play, or a great player making a great play, and catching the Islanders out of position, just a 2-on-1. Something we just don't see the Islanders do very much anymore themselves. There's a lot of one-man rush, um, shots from the point, this kind of thing, and they're scoring goals. They're figuring it out, but um, yeah, that was a tough game, I think the problem is with games like Columbus and even the Flyers. I think, because there's really no one notable on that team. Like, no one stands out. I couldn't tell you who the starting goalie was. We watched that game on the show. I couldn't tell you who the starting goalie was. I just know that Fedotov came in afterwards, and that was because I had seen his name on Twitter all day. But games like that, and then moving on to Columbus, it's there's no reason why they should be struggling at all. I know a team can win any given night. You're not going to go 82-0, but it just feels. I don't want to see the Islanders, who will likely play the Rangers or the Hurricanes in the first round. They can't struggle against these teams. That is a really great reason to, and we're going to talk about this later, be just concerned about this team and not get too excited whether they make the playoffs or not. Right? We're still 5 games away from knowing more. And I think it will come down to just like the very end. But even if they do, I'm not saying this isn't a reason for them to make it. they're struggling now against those 2 teams. That's that's difficult. Um, and even against the Blue Jackets, I don't know that it's a struggle so much, and again, I don't know if you watched this game, as well. After 2 periods, they were out shooting them by a margin of 2-1, and it was like 60 attempts to something, 30 something 3, and but that's not enough. Like, it can't be deserved to win-o-meter moral victories. Like, we're just not there, and that's not what the playoffs are about. And they didn't look like a team that was really hungry, right? I guess just going up to those games, and even against the Flyers, and that was a team they needed to lock it down against. That they could have made it, they could be 1 point closer at this point. They could be at 7 at their magic number instead of 8. It was the desperation. They did win, and you have to give them some amount of credit, but it didn't look desperate to me. What did it look like to you?
Well, first of all, the name of the goaltender on Philly is Sam Ersson. Um,
Nope. That is Guy.
Sam Ersson.
Never
Second, I
never would have
mean,
known that.
the thing is, like, it really just looked to me like it was a team that was, I want to say, boosted or given a little bit of fire from Barry Trotz. Like, Barry Trotz. This is where my mind's going. From Patrick Waugh. Um, he knows how to get, he knows how to get it out of them. Now, it's entirely true that there are times where this team just goes missing, but they're just a team that gutted it out. Again, these were all close wins. 2-1, 4-2, 2-0, 4-3. Like, these weren't, you know, blowaways by any means. So it was just, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, they were structured. Like, they've been playing the same way. Maybe they were just more meticulous in what they were doing. Maybe they were just a little hungrier, right? There were definitely games where on that 6-game win streak where you were just like, who is this team? They just mailed it in. That wasn't the team that I saw. They were at least giving, a formidable effort,
Yeah.
albeit in close contests. So it tells me that this team lacks the foot speed, but has the work ethic, but has questionable consistency. And that's, I think, in a nutshell, the way you look at the Islanders. Work ethic, check.
Well,
Skill,
I don't know about that every game. I think that's where there's a huge inconsistency thing there. You don't see
well, that's what I was gonna
that
say.
every single game.
Work ethic, check. Consistency, no check. And that's the problem, is that they know how to work when they want to work. They just don't always do that. And so as I'm saying this to you, I'm like, who do they play if the playoffs start today? Well, that, sir, is the Carolina Hurricanes. And how do you think that's going to go? You think they can mail it in against the Carolina Hurricanes? You think they can play slow against the Carolina Hurricanes? Do you
I mean,
think
we
they
saw
could have?
last year. Like, we know we've seen this before. This is a movie.
Right,
This is going to turn into the sequel, or we're going to see them play 2 games in a week against the Rangers and get a really good idea of what they can do against the same team
right.
twice in a week.
Because the
And
Hurricanes are the team that is going to limit you to 16 shots, and Kachekov is going to be just fine making all 16 shots, which they just did against the Washington Capitals, holding them to actually sub 20 shots. It was 16 shots in a full game for a team that is vying for playoff position in the Washington Capitals. Um, you know, they're there's a reason why, and I know I just called the Rangers a Stanley Cup favorite, but so are the Hurricanes. There's a reason for that.
yeah,
Looking last week at the game against the Red Wings, 24 shots for the Red Wings. Another team desperate to make the playoffs, albeit not playing great. But Hurricanes just beat up who they were supposed to beat up. I mean, that's what they do.
I
And
think that's a difference in the teams is they go out there. There really is no mistake. a game could be tight, on the scoreboard, and it's the underlying analytics or shot attempts or things like that aren't everything. But if even the eye test is, yeah, this team's got it. It's going to take an absolute miracle, unless it's like the 2021 Islanders where it was, oh yeah, they can always come back. Like they can always grind out a 2-1 win. That was just who they are. That's not most teams. That's not even the Islanders anymore. So, and it's really hard to do that against the Hurricanes. That's watching that series last year. The Islanders got out Islandered, and that was all of a sudden a team that they're aspiring to be again. And I think they're ahead of the Islanders. That's where they want to be. They're really good defensively, but they can really outscore you. Even if they're having a bad night on the back end, they can still outscore you. And that's, I think, eventually where the Islanders want to be. They need to mix that run and gun. They need a little Doug Weight and they need a little Barry Trotz and make it work. We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Take the action on any of the NHL's upcoming games, including Lightning Panthers, Rangers Islanders, or Avalanche Oilers. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 186 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. That's a good segue to the Predators game. I don't think they're a 2-0 team anymore. It was great to see that effort in front of Barry Trotz of all people. And you'd like to think that he was smiling to himself a little bit to go, he's like, oh yeah, I taught those guys that. Like that he knows he has his fingerprint. Even, it's been some time since he's been behind the bench. I think it's safe to say that his fingerprints are still firmly kind of there.
Yeah,
And in the
that's
DNA
fair.
of the team. So I'd like to think that he was smiling a little bit,
Yeah.
um, you know, behind closed doors a little bit. Um, I thought, this was a game that you wish they played like that all week. They really, I think, stepped up in this game. I thought it was a fun game to watch. If you were just not a fan and you just turn like of either team, you just turn this game on. I thought it was a pretty entertaining game. This wasn't
Yeah.
boring. It was a 2-0 game ultimately, but it was not. Didn't feel like that. The Predators really turned it on, like you said.
Yeah.
Varlamov 41 saves.
Well,
Um,
here's the thing, and this is what I meant before about work ethic, is when they need it, they got it. 33 blocked shots.
yeah,
That's a lot. That's a lot
yeah. It
in one game.
reminded, it looked like the Islanders from the Barry Trotz era. It looked like Johnny Boychuk going out there and just eating pucks, and all the fourth line going out there and eating pucks. But it was
Yeah.
Noah Dobson scores a goal blocking shots. Simon
And they got
Holmstrom's out there blocking
42
shots.
like they got 42 shots on net still. They blocked 33 shots.
Yeah, they went out
Insane.
there, and this was one of those, and this is why it's hard when it's the game right before the podcast, because I am really excited about that. We have every reason to be excited about that team if they could beat anybody then. You watched, I mean, I don't think I'd like it to be, a little more control in the offensive zone a little bit, but it just felt like, yeah, they're a good team and they were, in a lot of ways evenly matched. again, shot attempts, things like that. You want to get into underlying numbers, not discrediting analytics, but just from a we're watching the game perspective, they're at least matching each other, and it was okay. Um, Nail biter to the very end. It was like again, it was exciting just from not just from an on the perspective or if you're a fan of either of those teams. I thought it was just a really good game to watch. Um Anything else, like the penalty kill stood tall, a lot of block shots, Noah Dobson back to back game winning goals. Um High energy. That's that team. That's the tenacity. They're going out there, they're doing what they need to do. Um Varlamov gets him over the finish line. I do want to talk about him more in a second. Anything else stand out from this game?
Yeah, 15 giveaways. And I know it's a negative, but that's a lot of giveaways. And I guess you could argue if you have the puck more that you're giving away the puck more, but that's not the case in this game because, again, the Predators had 42 shots and the Islanders had to block 33 additional. So it's not one of those games where it's like, oh, the Islanders had the puck a lot. They didn't have it more than the Predators and they gave it away 15 times. So you got to
Bortuzzo in front of
clean
the net early in the game.
yeah, you got
Um,
to clean that up.
yeah, it was Bortuzzo and Riley didn't look great. I think I actually had the thought in real time. I can't even imagine if Aho was out there. It would have been worse, which is not good, right? I think Wah is trying to figure out who that last defense pairing is going to be, and it's not pointing to Aho at the moment. If I had to guess, I think it'll still go back and forth for a little bit, but there's going to be a point where he just sticks with a pairing and goes with it through the rest of the season because you want them to be ready and comfortable with each other going into the playoffs. Um, yeah, and I think that's a good point. On the positive side of things, Varlamov obviously steps up. Looks like he's the starter moving forward. Um, my understanding is that he's the Rangers start that he's going to start against the Rangers tomorrow and Tuesday. What do you think about that? That is it just that time of year and you can't really have too many deep thoughts about who the starter is? It's just who's playing well.
Yes. That's it. Put in who's going to play well. Not to say that Sorokin's not going to play well, but you ride the hot hand. Like
Yeah,
at this point, who's giving you the best chance to win when you need it the most? It's Varlamov right now, so you do it.
yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. And yeah, I mean, you already went over this, but it's I just wrote down the last time the Islanders went on a run like this. Dot dot dot. And it's really difficult. So as excited as I think fans have a right to be in this moment, especially given who they won the last game against and the way that the scoreboard seems to be going. Keeping an eye on the Pittsburgh Toronto game, um, nearing the end of the first period, Pittsburgh is up 1-0. So that's not great for the Islanders. It's not the worst thing in the world, but again, they control what their future looks like on their own. So Pittsburgh can win this game, and the Islanders can go out and win 4-5, and that's fine. Um, I think the last 5 games will feel as long as the first 77 have felt. On top of watching other games that will feel like Islander games because we now have a stake in them to some degree. Um, and again, we've gone over some of like the math, and my understanding is just they need to get 8 points one way or another to kind of stick on the Predators game for one more second. It did feel like a playoff game. It did feel like if we needed evidence that they could grind something out, this was it. They they finally bought in or sold out or whatever you want to call it and just went all in on this game. And it gave me a little confidence that in a specific moment, they understood finally, game 76 of the season, they understood the gravity of the situation that they were in. They had a great night on the out of town scoreboard on Friday. They have a chance to kind of write their own ticket here to a large degree, and they finally friggin' did it. Does it give you I know you're being that we switched roles here. It doesn't give you any confidence, like, I know there's a debate about you make the playoffs, you don't make the playoffs, who you're gonna get swept by we talked about the Rangers, the Canes. Does it give you any confidence? Like, not necessarily the last week in general, like, you gotta win hockey games. It's a results-based business, and by all accounts, they did what they needed to do. Um, and 3 regulation wins out of 4 is great. And then they got the other one anyway. It's not like they lost in OT. Is there any bit of confidence? Obviously, no Dobson's hot. You got a hot Varlamov, Barzell, and Horvat are playing well. Palmieri wakes up 26 goals in the season. It's not like Nelson doesn't have goals. Um, what are your thoughts? We talked about the schedule. Try not to get too far ahead. Does it instill any confidence? Is there anything there to hold on to?
I don't want to say I'm confident that they're going to keep this consistency up. Like, look, and you say this all the time, and it's well said. If they lose, fine. But if they lose and it's awful and they just aren't in it,
Yeah,
then that's a problem. So in the last 5 games, if they take 3 out of 5 and the out of town scoreboard works for them, and in all those 5 games they sneak in and all 5 games were meaningful, you're happy. If in those 5 games they go 3-2, didn't deserve to win 2 out of 3, Varlamov, maybe Sorokin each steal a game, and they're heading into the playoffs, and they still sneak in, you're feeling less good about that. So, and then of course, if they lose out or if they hurt themselves and they win 1 of 5 or 2 of 5,
yeah. They
that would
they
be
go
bad
one
too.
three and one, or
Yeah,
like there's a situation where they
right,
pull up Pittsburgh Penguins from last year and they miss by
right,
one
which
point.
would be devastating. But let's not put that cart before the horse. You just want them to play meaningful games. And if they play meaningful games heading into the postseason and they make the postseason, then you're excited because if they hang in tough with, a Rangers team, great. That's the kind of test you need to know that you can hack it where where it matters. So there's that, and then there's two of those games. So there's that, a young this is the same as the Blackhawks, a young Montreal team, speed. Cut down their speed, you have the structure, you have the work ethic to win that game. That's another game where it's questionable if they can attain to that speed. So I don't want to say I'm confident. I think they're all, including the Ranger games, I think they all have an opportunity to collect points. It's just a matter of if they're going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Even 3-0-2 or whatever, you have to beat the Penguins. Like, and I have a feeling it might come down to that. And it hopefully doesn't come down to it would be so devastating to beat the Penguins in OT, but you gave them the point to stay ahead of you. Right. That would be the most Islander way to end the season. That somehow it came down to you have to limit them to no points and you have to win, and you give them one. That would put the cherry on top of just a shit season. That
Yeah,
would
and
make
and
too
them
much sense.
losing in overtime, right? They need 2 points. They lose in overtime. They get one. Would be
Also
the
bad.
ultimate. The ultimate. You just islandered so hard.
Yeah, and it's already like, we've said this for 30, 40 games, almost, half the season, that it's just been exhausting.
Yeah.
So we're heading into a stretch here where they just need to kind of play well. And God, I had something else that I wanted to say, and I can't remember for the life of me what it is. Is there anything as I try to remember, is there anything upcoming that really worries you? You kinda went over the schedule. Um, do they have any back-to-backs? I think that would
No.
obviously give me some pause here. I think that's good. They had a couple days off after 4 games and 6 nights, which
Yeah, I
I
mean,
give them a credit for
3
that as well, but this is gonna be
3
another
games
tough
at
stretch.
home, 3 or 5 at home, which is encouraging. Um,
They're
although
in
I
the
don't know,
metro
just
area. They're not going anywhere.
they're
They're
all
going to
yeah, they're all
Manhattan.
local. The Islanders typically play well on the road, though. It's weird. I don't know. They just nothing gives me pause except for we've been here before. That's it. That's the only thing that gives me pause.
So I did remember what I was gonna say. I think what annoys me about this time of year, and it's easier to say before they do or don't make the playoffs, because we said this last year, or maybe it was the year before. They're in a position now where you're not even talking about that many wins more than what they did. At this point, if they had won 3 or 4 more games, I was originally gonna say 5, but 3 or 4 more games, that's not even an extra win a month. And I remember saying that specifically. All they needed was 1 more win a month 2 years ago, and they were in. It wasn't like, yeah, they weren't great, and it looked like a significant thing, but if you had beaten the right teams and you're talking about 6, 7 wins, this year, had they just that 6-game winning streak, the losing streak, or whatever it was, had it just been a couple more overtime losses or a win or 2 breaking things up, they're not in this position. They are in a position where teams are trying to catch up to them, and they'd have to only win 2 games or 3, which is very doable. You can lose both games to the Rangers and win against the Montreal Canadiens, Devils, and Penguins and make it. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a different situation. I think that's what annoys me the most is we're not even asking this team to do we're asking a lot of them now. Frankly, they should be asking a lot of themselves right now. But throughout the season, this was the most annoying thing. When they were going 4, 5, and 1, all we're talking about is in 10-game stretches going 5, 4, and 1, and over 30 games just winning 3 or more, 4 more, and that would have changed this moment. You would have been 6 points ahead. You would have had 91 points. You really would have needed to just Pittsburgh Penguins last season shit the bed to not make it. And given what the schedule is, even if they got to this point exactly there, nothing has changed. 4-game win streak. They're going into the last 5 games of the season. You maybe need to win 2 to just be completely clear. Even in the second wild card spot. It's crazy to me, and it's really annoying. And that to me is what gives me pause going into these last 5 games. We're not ultimately asking them for a whole lot. Win 4 hockey games. They just won 4 in a row. Go win 4 hockey games out of 5. For a good team, that is a normal thing.
Well, yes, and that's why, like, I forget what game it was. I'm looking at it now. I can't remember what game it was, but in the third period of one of these games that they lost, they just needed to win the period.
That stuff too is these little things, right?
Like, and they come out flat. You can't get your shit together for 20 minutes.
But that was most of the season. You think about all those overtime
I know.
losses and all those
No,
games
you're right.
that overtime, it's not even overtime losses because they did win some of those games that they let up third period leads. But there was how many of them were there? Were there 18 third period blown leads?
Something like that.
Again, I'm not asking for all 18 back. I'm not even asking for 10 of them back. 4. 4 of those games, just win it like you did against the Predators the other night. Where was that effort 4 more times? And you lost to the fucking San Jose Sharks or the Canadians or the Blackhawks. we're not even saying do it against the Rangers. God damn it, the fucking Stadium Series game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you could just go through any of these things, and it's like again, 4 more times, 2 more times, 2 more times this is a completely different outlook for the last 5 games of the season, changing nothing else but 2 games. Not even against teams that are around you. Like, not the 7-0 drubbing against the Penguins, and not 2 nights later when they lost again. Anything. Doesn't even need forget about the loss to the Detroit Red Wings a few weeks ago, that it was a must-win game against a team that they were around in the playoff hunt went with. San Jose, Montreal, the Devils a bunch of times. Like, we're not we're not talking about hard games. We're not talking about those were games that they were already winning. Like you said, they were like, win the rest of the period. Win the last 5 minutes. That's win a shift. Like, it came down to just not being able to clear the puck. Matt Martin, Pajot, and that they almost blew it the other night against the Predators. They did the same thing. It came down. It was so razor thin, where that game could have just been a disaster. Like, it could have went the complete other way, and there was nothing redeeming about it. Regardless, maybe Varlamov, they could have just as easily lost that game 1-0,
Yeah.
and you would have been here going, "Oh yeah, they need to just win out." After Friday night, not having won that game, blowing your chance to kind of control your future. Yeah, they could have just been in this position. We would have been like, "Oh yeah, they're not making the playoffs." Like, based on past performance, 77 games worth, regardless of going 3-1 last week, they're not winning 5 games out of 5. 6-game winning streak is not indicative. Even a 4-game winning streak, not indicative of just being able to win the rest of your games. Because they can't win a shift. They can't win a period, half a period. You've flipped me already. But that's the problem. But I
Yeah.
was thinking about that today, just thinking about this team, and they're not very different than the last 2 seasons. This is not a very different team. I understand the roster has changed. I'll be the first one to say that. But it's not a lot different. I don't remember what the
No.
playoffs ultimately came down, like the race came down to last year. But I imagine 4 wins changes that too. A
Yeah.
handful, 1 a month.
And I think that's, again, then you're not in the position they're in right now, and they're sitting comfortably. So it's a great point.
Yeah, it makes it hard to look forward. And like, we started the show very excited. Once you get into the nitty-gritty of it, it makes it really hard to be excited.
You
Because you just
started excited.
yeah, I
You,
started excited.
I. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to rain on your earlier parade. It's just, again, we've been here. Prove me wrong, and then
I
let's
think
talk next
that's
week.
I think that's exactly where it is. It's definitely a prove me wrong situation. They It almost feels like they're here by no fault of their own. Like, they're
Well,
in this position
nobody wants that last wild card spot. That's the thing.
for the Islanders, for the teams not named Detroit, who can only go for that last spot, which is good for the Metro teams, because that leaves another spot open because it's so tight. But it's not good for whoever. If you're in the Metro, it's not good whether you're in third place in the Metro or if you're in the second wild card spot. The Rangers or the Canes are who you're playing. That is not an easy series. I don't think any team. I mean, I'm rooting for the Islanders, obviously. I don't think either team, any team out of the 4 or 5 that are going for that spot in the third in the Metro or the second wild card, make it out of the first round. I The Islanders could do it. I don't know how you beat the Canes in 4 games. I think they're more likely to beat the Rangers in 4 games than they are the Carolina Hurricanes simply by the Islanders' spirit and energy and rivalry, like not from skill. But they could do it. Um, I don't think they beat the Canes, so I kind of want them in that second wild card spot. The only advantage is if you wind up beating the Canes, um, you become a higher seed a little bit, but they have such a low points. The further you go, they're not a high seed. It's not like you have home ice advantage at all. So it's
Yeah.
almost either way is kind of worthless. And like I said, I think I'd rather them for excitement purposes and having watched them shit their pants against the Canes last season in the playoffs. I don't need a sequel of that movie. I'd rather just move on. The Rangers, it's been 20 years since that series. Give me that playoff series all day. I'll root for that. Just make the playoffs, Islanders. I'd
Yeah.
go 3-0-2 and lose a couple points, or lose same as, or just win the four. You don't need to win all five, and
Yeah.
maybe you'll wind up in that spot. But it could make it really exciting. Um, before we end the show, happy Wade Dublowitz Day. So we talked about Doobie a number of episodes ago on a random jersey discussion, um, which we should do soon. I think we're running out of time today. But to those who celebrate, happy Doobie Day. If you don't know what we're talking about, it's the day, and thanks Isles Fix for reminding me. Um, the Wade Dublowitz poke check to beat the Devils in 2007, um, to get them into the playoffs. And I was watching that video, and I do want to at least pull up the Islanders roster from that season, because I was watching the video and just watching the players go by. It seemed like it was the end of an era. Like the next that was 06, 07. The next season, things really change. It's the year before Tavares.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of those players don't return.
Yeah. That's
Um,
that's the heavy Josh Bailey, Kyle Okposo year.
2007. Let's see. 06, 07. Um, I kind of want to go to the next season to really see. Sean Bates is still there. Brian Berard comes back. Really weird. Um, yeah, there's no more Jason Blake, for instance. It's one of the last years for Sean Bates, which definitely feels like the end of an era. Yeah. The season after that's the last one for him. So watching that video, the jerseys change after that, which is really weird. Um, but you had, some players kind of went over and kind of spill over, but that's um 06, 07. Yeah, it's the Ryan Smith year. Um, so it was a difficult one. Rick DiPietro plays great that season. So it's weird that Wade Dublowitz goes in there and wins that last game. Marc-Andre Bergeron. But like I was looking at that, I remember, now that I'm thinking out loud, playing PS2 and being the Islanders in NHL '06 or whatever, '07. And Mike York was so fast. Jeff Tambellini was so fast. Uh, Nielsen had the great breakaway. It was just a different team. God, Tom Pody. Like, you just get into a lot of these players that it never really fully worked out with the Islanders. Yashin, I think that's his last season with the Islanders. Is he back the next year? No, I think he's gone. Um, there's a really big turnover after that. So I watched that video, and then I was looking at all my stuff that I had in the basement that was really from the end of that era and before. And yeah, it was tough. And then I saw the video today, and I was like, oh, what a day. This is interesting. Is that a core memory for you too, like that time period for being an Islander fan?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, like I remember less and less about those days now and more, the Tavares and Pozo and Mark Streit and that whole era. That's really what I remember more now.
Yeah, I guess I was going a ton of games in those years. I don't know. I really loved that. I think that was when like my true fandom really came into being, from that 2002 Maple Leaf series and that season on is really when I was involved. It's funny, it's after this season, after that Dublitz season, that poke check, where I stopped paying attention because they were so bad. Even when Tavares came on, they were just so bad, it was hard to watch. So there's a big chunk of time I don't really remember until a little bit later, and they start to kind of pick things up a little bit. Maybe after 2011, 12 or so. Certainly by 13 when they're like gonna make the playoffs again. It was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make sure I go to a playoff game," because it just was so hard to do that before. Um, yeah, just wanted to make sure we brought that up. Um, Closing thoughts, feelings, emotions?
No, that's a good way to head out on Doobie there.
All right. You know where to find us on social media and SM Hockey pretty much everywhere. You find James' work at New Jersey Hockey Now. I don't know what you said last week, but you need to figure it out quick and how we close the show because they went on a little run here. We also need to remember what you said before the 6-game winning streak.
I
But
said until next time, collect those points.
here we go, baby. Collect those points, Islanders. See you next time.